So they thought what they've done.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, it's one thing. So.
Yep.
No. Son. Alan,
Okay, Gary, we can start the recording.
It's 7:08 and I will call the October 12th Coburg City Council meeting to order. This meeting will be an in-person and combination Zoom meeting. Participants will be required to social distance and wear masks. If you're not able to attend the meeting in person, you're always able to contact the city recorder to discuss best options to attend our meetings. Written comments are accepted in person or by email and must be received by 3 p.m. of the day of the meeting. All council meetings are recorded and live streamed at www.coburgoregon.org. No registration is required to get the streaming. If you have any questions, please contact our city recorder, Sammy Egbert. This meeting is being video and audio recorded and live streamed. Meeting includes participants in person as well as by Zoom. There will be an opportunity for public to provide testimony during today's meeting. During the public comment, we will take the testimony in the following order. Written testimony submitted to the city recorder prior to the meeting. In-person participants who have signed in to speak. And then Zoom participants who have signed up in advance or raise their hand during the citizen testimony period. We'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
We have Mayor Smith, Councilor Bell, Councilor Alexander, Councilor Fox, Councilor McConnell, Councilor Lehman present, and Councilor Blaine is absent. There is a quorum.
Thank you, Sammy. As is pretty obvious with microphones and cameras everywhere, the chamber, the council chamber has been turned into a studio. It's a challenge, and I want to recognize the staff for putting an awful lot of energy and time into making this happen and continuing to learn as we move forward. I myself have tried to pick up a few things. I have a laptop here so I can see a different perspective of the Zoom meetings because I can't see across the room. To look at TV screens, especially when presentations are on. So there's all kinds of little things that are happening with this. Just remind you that your microphone, if you have a green light on, you're on. And you just press the button to turn the green light on or off. The screen, or the podium for the speakers has a microphone on it, and there are speakers in the room so that people can hear, and we don't, especially with masks on right now, I think that's very helpful to have that available. We also have ADA compliance, and I think we got 5 or 6 modules to be able to help people with hearing, and they've got ear clips or the radio band that tunes into their hearing aids. So technology is here, and a lot of work. And so thank you to Sammy and others for putting this together. Again, we're live streaming, we're recording, and we've got cameras and mics going on everywhere. It's a pretty neat system, and I've been anxious to try it, and so far we're doing pretty good. So hopefully it keeps going. We have a liaison check-in. We appointed our liaisons in February of 2021. We agreed to change annually. We had one that was 6 months, and that was the police liaison. After discussion, found that 6 months wasn't enough to even get on your feet and move forward, so we changed that one to a year also, if counselors recall. I want that tickler in your mind that coming up next year, let's look at the liaison assignments and discussion about how that's working. Again, invitation to bring your information from your liaison assignment to any council meeting, not just wait for a report or an invitation, but it's to help bring that communication between committees, organizations, and the council. Let's see, agenda review.
Okay, so we actually have the red folders back. Inside your red folders, you'll find 3 different items in there. Park and Tree work plan and goals. That will fall under special guests if you want to pencil that in. The citizen inquiry report, that report was not complete and ready to go by the packet deadline, so you'll find that under agenda item 9. And then the annual financial report revised. I missed that and did not get it. It went to your city administration report. So I believe you all have copies of it and have been emailed copies of it, but this is just to put it on the record. And that's it.
Thank you, Sammy. Citizens testimony. Do we have any written testimony, Sammy?
There is no written testimony submitted.
Okay. In person, anybody signed up?
I don't have anybody
Anybody
signed up.
raising their hand? Okay, any Zoom members raising their hand?
We do not.
Seeing none. Moving on. Consent agenda. Councilors may remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion by requesting such action prior to consideration. The consent agenda contents are the minutes from the July 27 City Council Planning Commission work session, minutes from the August 10 City Council meeting, minutes from the August 31 City Council work session, an IGA with the City of Springfield for inmate housing services, and professional credit services contract agreement for collection services. Does anybody want to remove any of these issues from the consent agenda for further discussion? Hearing none, are there any questions regarding any of these? I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
We have Counselor Fox with a motion to approve the consent agenda with a second by Counselor Alexander. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. Special guest. We have the Parks and Tree Committee report. We do have the chair of the Parks and Tree Committee, Mary Mosier, here. I heard you didn't necessarily have a presentation, but would like to be able to answer questions.
I did, yes.
Okay, you do have a copy of the Park and Tree Committee Work Plan Goals in your packet. I might just highlight a few things since you haven't had time to read through it. The toys were replaced at Norma Pfeiffer Park. That was just done recently. They look great. Trails in, if you skip down to the work plan projects in the future, we've actually looked at Trails in, and if you've been down there, you've noticed that the trees are dead. And so those will be replaced with new plantings of trees and bushes, and they'll be put in clumps instead of like little soldiers marching along the path. So we're excited to see that happen when the weather's changing here, so it'll be a better time of year to get those in the ground. The Booth Kelly signs are in the works with some wonderful donation. And this will include both historical and botanical information. And Norma Pfeiffer, there has been a plan drawn up by one of the members of our committee that we adopted that looks really nice, that will go around the flagpole. So that is kind of in the works. We're waiting on some funding, hoping we'll have funding to take care of that. So there'll be a new area there. Currently, there's been a bench donated and Public Works has installed that. So if you haven't, you might swing by and take a look at that. So it's a dedication on the back of it. The committee was really active in writing a policy for donations. We were happy that the city worked with a couple of members from the committee and that the council adopted that policy. So we're continuing to do work parties, and this summer, if you've been around town and walked through the parks, you've seen some of the work that was done. I won't go through all of this, but I would like to kind of jump down where underneath the goals, the long-term goals was to establish a community volunteer base. And so while this hasn't formally become part of something within the city, we've had volunteers that have stepped forward and said, we would like to work on Johnny Diamond. And it is a big park and it is a new park and it has a very substantial weed problem. And so we are thrilled that residents in that area stepped forward and said, you know, we're willing to do this. And the city, you know, worked with them in training, and we have a lead person that's taken that over to organize, advertise, and get volunteers there. So that's a wonderful thing that has happened this year. So, and we've also established a tree subcommittee that has been very active in looking at trees within the parks, pointing out ones that need to come down, and they're very knowledgeable about what trees need to go in to replace those, and thinking long-term, short-term, the whole thing. So we're very privileged to have members on the committee that are so knowledgeable about this. So any questions?
Councilor Lehman.
Yes.
It may not be directly for you, but maybe Brian, are we able to use any kind of weed killer in our parks?
I think Brian has done some research on that and he could better address that than us. And yeah, I know that the manual method takes a long time and a lot of effort. So I'll let him answer that question for you.
Do I need to, with this new, do I need to state who I am, Sammy?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. Yes, we do use some weed killers. We use some pre-emergents. We've been trying to find environmentally friendly variations. We have come up with a few that seem like they work. We've been using for weed killer itself, some vinegar and Dawn dish soap. That seems to help out, but the old manual method is our best method to get the weeds out of the flower beds.
I was specifically thinking about just in the lawn areas, you know, some of our walkways has almost more weeds than grass.
Yes, we do not spray any of the soft surface trails. We just don't. we're hoping that foot traffic kind of keeps those soft surface trails, the weeds knocked down.
Again, I'm talking about the concrete walkway through town, the sidewalks, well, the new 6 foot wide one down at the end of Abbey Road, for example, out the park there. It just seems like there's more weeds in that grass area than it is grass. So are we able to apply any kind of weed killer to those areas?
So if you're talking about kind of down between the Hatfield Estates and Abbey area, that's actually a bioswale. So that's where the stormwater goes to be filtered through the ground. So no, we don't apply any weed control down there.
There's some areas that's not in the swale, but it's just along the sidewalk, 8 to 10 feet between that and the road.
Yeah.
That's considered the swale still.
Yeah, we just, I think we've taken a pretty proactive approach in using mowing methods instead of herbicides.
Mechanical weed control
Yes,
versus.
mechanical. We try not to let it
chemical.
go to seed, so it spreads that way. So we just try and keep the weeds knocked down in that fashion.
Any other questions from counselors? Counselor McConnell?
I just want to say to Brian and his crew and to the volunteers, I think all the parks look beautiful. I walk all of them, and I'm just always impressed by how beautiful they are. And
They're green.
Pollinators. I just really commend you.
I also want to commend both the public works staff and the committee. Over the years, obviously, the parks do look so much better now. And the care and pride that all of you put into that shows. And I have kids that were raised in this community and they come back and they're like, wow. They haven't been here for a while. And so that says something when somebody's grown up here and they come back and it's a wow. And I think that just what your committee does and the time that you spend and bringing those volunteers in and giving that ownership to both you and our citizens is such a key element of what committees, I hope, work to do. And I've been a part of some of the work parties and it's rewarding. It's rewarding to go into a park, spend a couple hours, walk away and say, yeah, that looks really good. The work with the trees and the knowledge that you guys have, your tree subcommittee, two great people that have wonderful knowledge. And I think those are important things. You plant a tree, that's a 50 to 100+ year commitment in this community. So having people knowledgeable about these trees, where to put them and how they grow is a really big deal. And I think we've placed some good importance on it and have some good people dealing with that important issue. So again, thank you to the staff and the committee. It's really looking good and a great job.
I would just like to echo exactly that. I am tremendously impressed, and please take that back to your committee and take that back to your staff, because I just find it absolutely phenomenal, and y'all are working so hard. I see you and I see the results. It's wonderful.
And I want to comment on the report. This is an important part of our community communication thing, getting our committees to come back and talk to us so that we can share information back and forth and talk and see what you guys have done. I feel like the council kind of buried that and not so much buried it purposely, but just didn't pay attention to it. And so I think it's really important to see you guys come in here and share your enthusiasm, your hard work, and your achievements with us. So again, thank you for that too. Other questions? Okay. Moving on. No ordinances or resolutions. Planning Commission reappointment. Item 6.
Good evening, everyone. Before you is the reappointment for 3 planning commissioners, Paul Thompson, Marissa Doyle, and Seth Clark. All 3 commissioners meet the eligibility requirements, and the 2-year terms will end October of 2023 if reappointed. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to recommend Mayor Smith reappoint Paul Thompson, Marissa Doyle, and Seth Clark to Planning Commission for a 2-year terms expiring October 2023. I second that.
Okay. Counselor Bell has moved and Counselor McConnell has seconded the recommendation of Mayor Smith reappointing Paul Thompson, Marissa Doyle, and Seth Clark to Planning Commission for 2-year terms expiring October 2023. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, per section 5 in the city charter, I hereby appoint Paul Thompson, Marissa Doyle, and Seth Clark to a new term on the Planning Commission through October of 2023. Congratulations and thank you to those members. Street banner donation. Joe?
Good evening. The Coburg Community Grange, a couple of years ago, helped put together the Welcome to Coburg banners that have the penny farthing bike, the big wheel bike, or Jim Broughton bike, as most of us locally know it. And we're really excited about that and how well they were received. So we want to take another step in that direction. The Grange is very supportive of first responders. You see the fire department and the police department is very well supported, as is the Honor Flight System, which is a national program where we honor vets throughout the country and send them to Washington, D.C. But we want to bring it local. And you should have in your packet a couple of pictures of banners. We like to place banners on the light poles, like we did with the Welcome to Coburg banners. And we'd like to start out, we originally thought we'd do 12 a year. This year, we ended up getting 15 applications, and at this point, we've accepted all of them. And we'd like the city's support in allowing us to get those banners made and put up. The question is when and how long and what kind of time frame we'd like to do that. Well, our suggested and recommendation would be for the month of November from the 1st to the 30th, because November is Veterans Month. That being said, the question has come, well, what about Memorial Day? What about Independence Day? Well, there's a whole lot of other things that go on in this community, and I don't want to hog the light pole strictly for this project. I think it's something that we can do a lot of projects throughout the year. I just think this is one that would be a pretty good part of it. So our goal is to put up 15 this year and add 12 every year, as long as the budget of the Grange stays fluid, and it's been pretty good over the last few years. So basically what we want to do is, you should have 2 of these pictures in front of you. The one that's the red, white, and blue is the diagram that we want to go with. But the other one is a banner that says honoring the service and family of. It'll have a picture of the service member. It'll have their name and the branch of service on it. We did put an ad in the last city newsletter, and we also put it on I Love Coburg. And from those ads, I got 16 applications. One has since resigned, because what we did is we're looking at the older veterans first. We want to recognize them while they're still alive. the one lady that withdrew hers, her husband was in the Gulf War, and we'll pick her up a year or two down the road if we can add 12 each year. I don't know what our numbers on the light poles as far as hangers are to put them on. And I know there's a few that don't have them. There's a few that are in amongst the trees, but I think if we need to buy some, the Grange would be more than happy to help support Public Works to get those so we can get these banners put up. Like I say, some cities put them up and leave them up year round. Some put them up for 6 months out of the year. I think if we rotate them, if we did them for the month of November, or even if we wanted to put them up at another time of the year, they're going to last a lot longer. And some people say, well, how do you jury them? The Grange does all the jurying. Everything comes through the Grange. We basically jury like we do for the honor flight. And that's a national organization. So we've got a lot of pointers and leads coming from those people on how to do it. And our director for the South Willamette Valley Honor Flight, Ed Bach, he also helped Albany with their banners. So he's been very supportive of helping us put this together. I've talked to Jennifer up at Northwest Sign. She has the signs ready to go to print if that's the way we want to go. And we could have them to Brian by the 1st of November to put them up if the council thinks that that's something we can move forward on.
Brian, changing out banners. Is that, how intense is that?
Probably 5-minute job per light pole.
And what do you think we have? A dozen, 15, 20?
Oh, we have several that we can do. 15 is a good start, but you could probably double that with the current brackets that are on the poles. And then after 30, we probably have to look at new brackets for the remaining light poles. But there is also lots of poles down in Abbey, Austin, in that area. And then there's some Pavilion Park.
Yeah, there's probably what, 60 probably.
I think we have the number is 72.
Well,
That's close.
well, I've certainly had nothing but positive public input from banners, so I would certainly support it. Any comments or questions from Councillor Fox and Alexander?
So it's gonna look like the front.
The red and white and blue one,
Okay,
John, is the style we want to go with, but the verbiage is on the other one.
okay. And would the reverse have this American Pride, or would it both sides?
They'd be, both sides will be identical, have the veteran on both sides, yes. Basically like our banners we have now with the bike on it, Welcome to Coburg. And again, we don't want to displace all of the Welcome to Coburg signs. We want to keep them mixed in. And I know, like when we do the quilt show, they have banners, and some of the other events have banners. I don't want to tie up all these poles so the other events can't do that. I mean, it's a good advertising. It's good for the city. And I think this is a good way to do that. If we put them up, say for the month of November for 30 days or whatever works out, give or take a few days, or, you know, and if we want to put them up back in for Memorial Day or Independence Day or whatever, we could do that too. But specifically, since November is Veterans Month and their veterans are honored throughout the country, that was kind of our suggestion and recommendation to council. But whatever you want to do, we're willing to move forward on it.
Councillor Alexander, then McConnell.
Councilor Fox asked my question. That's exactly what I was gonna ask.
Councillor McConnell.
So what is the process that you go through to select who's on? Like what?
There was an article we put into the last city newsletter asking for any family members or veterans to contact me personally, and my phone number was in there. And all those names are brought into the Grange. Fortunately, this year we had 16. Again, one removed their name, so we have 15. So we decided instead of doing 12 each year, since we had 15, I don't want to select 3 out. We're going to do all 15 to start with, and then we'll do 12 each year moving forward. This year, the criteria has to be prior service of before 1975. And again, the reason we do it this way is we want to reach all the elder veterans. Well, they're still with us and they're still alive, and their families can be remembered and be honored to have their family vets picture up there. And then as we go next year, we'll go from maybe 85 or 90 back to 75 and fill in that gap and until we get all of them. My total guess is if we have let's say 1,140 people in Coburg, you're going to have probably 3 to 4% veterans. So most, I'm guessing we're probably going to have 48, maybe 50 by the end of this project if we get them all together and put them up. And
So
again,
that's
these banners will last for years. You can see the ones that are out there now that've been up for what, 1.5 to 2 years. They look like the day they put them up, they look great. They did a good job. And it's the same company that will be making them for us.
They have to personally live in the Coburg.
They have to live in the Coburg Fire District when the signs are erected. Now, if they pass away or get moved into a nursing home or the family sells and downsizes and moves out, when the signs are made, we'll still continue to support them. If at some time, like, for example, Jerry McKibben, my brother-in-law is one of them. He's in hospice right now. We're hoping we can get the signs up while he's still with us. If something happens and he dies, we'll give the family the option. They can have the banner or we'll continue to fly it because it does have remembering the serviceman and the family.
Is there a verification process that you use? I mean, do they have to have a DD 214 or something?
DD 214 is a requirement. Basically, we like to have a picture of them in uniform because that's pretty much if they're going to have a picture in uniform, it's kind of a tell story that, yeah, they're probably a veteran. Well, I had one that didn't have a military uniform and sent me his high school graduation picture. Well, dig a little deeper, I happened to find a picture of him in another network and it worked out. I really like to have them in their military uniforms to recognize the service or branch of service that they were in. So.
Councilor Bell.
I don't have a question, but I would like to make a comment. I think this is absolutely wonderful. I have a very good friend who is a Marine and he was prior Marine. He was honored in Sweet Home with a banner in this way. And it made his eyes get really all foggy. So I know this means a lot to veterans and families.
Having gone on the honor flight and Ray has been with us a couple times. It's amazing the stories that you hear and what you see from these veterans. I took my brother-in-law when I went in 2016. We both went as veterans. I heard stories from him that I've known Jerry since I was 3 or 4 years old. And I never heard any of these stories. And all of a sudden I start hearing them. And then I've gone back a couple times since with other veterans and the stories they hear that they don't tell their wives, they don't tell their parents, they don't tell their siblings. I mean, you start pulling this stuff out. And when you see a guy that's 280 pounds come walking off a plane and you got 50, 75 people standing there in a uniform saluting them saying, welcome home. And the tears start flowing. It hits you pretty hard, you know. These guys need that respect. They need to know that their sacrifices is appreciated by all of us. And that's what the Grange's goal is, to show them that we support them.
Yeah, I believe it's pretty special. Again, the honor flights are just an illustration of that commitment and the things and the sacrifice that they did make. You know, you say they don't share the stories with the people they love. I think part of it is they try not to share the story.
They don't want to share the horror stories. Exactly right.
And to see them go to Washington, DC and look at these memorials and then open that story up and share it is incredible.
And the good news is we've been shut down because of COVID. Well, they just did an honor flight. They left on the 30th of September and got back on the 4th of October. It was a great success. We took 52 veterans. I think 45 of them were in wheelchairs, but you know what? We got them there and they got to see their memorial, and that's what it's all about.
That's great.
That's why we do it. So.
Councilor Fox?
I'm just so curious, the gentleman who couldn't find his photograph, doesn't the branch of service have something?
That's where I went in the back door. Some people don't know that that's an option to do that, but. And again, it's weird when you got, you know, like when I went up and met with the people making these signs, I told Jennifer, I says, I got a problem. I says, some of these pictures are 50, 60 years old. You know, mine when I was 17, well, that's 50 years ago, you know. How are you going to make this work? Because the pixels says, well, once we put them up on the sign, if you walk up and held it up and looked at it, it'd be real pixelated. You would have a hard time trying to recognize a person, but at a distance up on the pole, you'll be able to see who it is. And that was what my biggest concern is. So she's done a great job of getting the picture sorted out and ready for it. So I told her I'd call her tomorrow and let her know what the council decided, if that's the way we want to go.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none. Is there anybody that doesn't want this to happen? I think that's the easier way to go. So, thumbs up, everybody?
Yep.
There we go.
All right, we'll get them ordered tomorrow and to the city by the 1st. Thanks, Brian. Thank you,
Joe.
council, very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Thank
your
you,
time.
Grange.
Mayor, I just wanted to point out that this is actually the new donation policy that you just approved. And so Joe's really one of the first. We have a couple, but he's one of the first ones to use this policy. And so I think it's going to work really well for the city.
I'm glad to hear that, and I think it was important because it gives the staff the ability to deal with what kind of work does that create for them and us to address that. And plus, we get to see and hear what is coming up. So I think that's a great policy that we took on there.
And no surprise that Joe was the first one,
No.
not one bit.
I have one thing.
Go ahead, Brian.
I don't want the city council to worry about the city spending time hanging banners, especially these banners. I'm working, Joe doesn't know this yet, but I'm going to be putting together a group of younger veterans to help me put those up.
Excellent.
That's great.
Administrative information reports, park land swap. Dan.
I think so. Okay.
Guess I'm gonna stay here. So for several years, there's been a discussion about the land that is abutting the Pavilion Park and up against the old City Hall that has been used as parkland. And the city does mow it, but it doesn't belong to the city. It is privately owned by Shepherd Investment Group. When the Coburg build out scenario came out, it was really evident of what could happen on that land, and it would disrupt the city's ability to use the park. I entered into conversations with the Shepherd family regarding the property at the request of the mayor. And that has been going back and forth for almost a year now, I believe. And I was finally able to sit down with the family this month after we had an appraisal of the land. And they were willing, so we came up with an idea for a land swap because the city doesn't really have the money to purchase the land outright. They basically, on this end of City Hall, the grassy area back there that abuts their building, and then the parking spaces to the south abut their building, but the city owns them, and they don't have parking back there. So there is an interest on their part to have some parking for their buildings. And they also saw it as a way to improve their ability to approach their buildings and take care of their business. So they have agreed to consider a land swap. The land at the park is significantly more valuable, but they agreed to donate the difference. They had one request, and that was that some form of naming for the park or the future plaza at the park or something would be named for their daughter Laura, who recently passed away. So this report is to give the council the information. The appraisal report is attached. The city would be giving up some parking spaces down where the police building is. And then there's some spaces to this side. There are cars that are going away, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't gain cars in the future for the city. We're working with the police chief to try to figure out a different place for taking his building. It could be over here behind
in this weird parking square behind the tree. That would put that building into the security camera zone, so we would have a security camera on their building. It will, like on court days, it could be tight parking here, but we've also got downtown parking now that we can give directional signs to. I'm also in the, I've been talking with the owners of this property over here, the Lamonts, for a couple years about creating some downtown parking on that lot immediately to the north. I will be meeting with them sometime in the future. We don't have a day set yet to discuss that. So that could also be an option for increased parking in the downtown area. So at this point, the question that we have is if the council wants to move forward with a land swap for the parkland. If we weren't able to do this, then that can be sold off. It could become a parking lot. It could become a development building. But it's definitely going to reduce the amount of parkland available to the community in the downtown area. So I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have about this.
Counselor Alexander?
Where, as far as budget, where is the cost gonna come from for escrow and legal?
That's a good question. Probably professional fees. We have a budget for professional fees. So, yeah, so.
Counselor McConnell?
I think it's an excellent idea. My only question is when they say they want something named after their daughter, are they specific about what they want?
No, they were actually open to consideration. They gave me her name and said, we'd like something. They said it could be Laura's Park or Laura's Plaza or Laura Shepherd Park, or that's actually not her last name because she was married. So they were very open to what that became and wanted to be part of that decision-making process. And they also said that if this were to happen, they would be interested in donating to the updates to the park as well. So they would like to participate in that as well.
So I've had some, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, maybe they would be interested in donating to a mural.
And that's a possibility.
That's a possibility.
I've had some discussion with citizens and my wife who's a member of the Parks Committee, and this would be something that would be pushed to the committee for input and possibly interviewing the Shepherd family to get some ideas about what we could do, whether it's a mural or a plaza or whatever that we could do to put in that park in memory of Laura. So there's lots of opportunity, and I think the Parks Committee is well positioned to try and find what would be best for that to make a recommendation if we go through with this. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Bell?
Well, I just have a question because I'm not sure I understand what properties you're talking about that the Shepherd family owns and wants access to. Is that?
So south, all the buildings with the exception of the little garage, the Shepherd family own all the way to Chiefs.
Okay.
So this big concrete building and then the big umbrella properties building is there. And then there's a garage where the old gas station is. That is also their property. So they literally, the city owns the parking almost all the way to the end. There is some parking at the very end, but we own almost all of the lot. There is a diagram included in this that shows where the land swap would be.
I got that. I just wasn't sure. You said their buildings and I wasn't sure what I don't have the historical
Right.
knowledge, so I just have to ask these questions.
Other questions? Councilor McCall?
I don't mean to sound petty, but we're swapping land. So whole thing about naming something after Laura is, I don't it's like I'm sounding petty. That's, we're doing that because there is a difference in the cost of the property. Is that what?
Yeah, so they would be not just swapping, but making a substantial donation of the difference.
Just wanted to clarify.
Any other statements or concerns, questions? At this point, does the council have any concerns with having the city administrator move forward with this?
It's very generous of the family.
It seemed like a reasonable, very reasonable swap idea and beneficial to all parties.
And they're pulling parking off the streets, putting it behind.
Well, I know the family has a significant history of donating to help the city, and it's very significant, actually. So I'm not surprised. And the discussion with him was that when they first saw that property, they thought it needed to be a park. And now it's being fulfilled. So for years, I've been concerned about losing that because we basically have been mowing it and taking care of it, we being the city, and using it, but it hasn't been ours. So when we did the build out, if you will recall, there was a parking lot pasted into that presentation. I specifically asked for that so that people, I wanted to incite discussion on this so that people would see that that wasn't our property and it could be developed. And there was significant feedback on that one specific scenario that helped support my feeling that we really needed to act on this. And I appreciate the work that Ann has put into this to approach them, and it has been a long process. They actually own so many properties, they lost track of this one and wondered if it was theirs or not. So we found out it was, and I hope we can move forward and make this happen. So thank you, council, and thank you, Ann. Citizens inquiry report. Any?
So your report is just an information report that comes to you guys quarterly. It's listed on there. There's quite a few this month. I think normally you guys are used to seeing about 5 to 10, and I don't have it in front of me, but I believe there's 15-ish on there. So I would say probably 90% of those went to Public Works. So they've been really busy with that as well.
Any questions or comments on citizens inquiries?
I did. So
Mr. Lane?
when it says date closed, does that mean that it was actually resolved or that it?
Yeah, so if in the report, if you read through, it kind of goes through how the process is outlined. So we intake them and they're logged in administration. They go up to the city administrator and whatever department head it falls under. The department head will respond to it, close it, summarize that, and return it to the city administrator who signs off on it when they've been notified, and then it comes back to administrative and logged closed.
As a council, it might be helpful, but maybe it might be too much work to actually know what the resolution was or what the outcome was. All this tells us is that there was a question or an issue or concern, but not really what happened.
Mm-hmm. We can provide, yeah, and I put that in the report. There's each one of them's probably 6 to 10 pages, you know, in the correspondence and the emails. The files are available to review, or we can report a summary to you and break out that spreadsheet, whatever council like.
I'd say just a summary of the resolution, not the entire process.
Okay. And if there's counselors that have any questions or would like to look at those too, the details are behind them here, so.
Just a sentence or two that lets us know, was it resolved to the satisfaction of the complainant, or
Sure,
what the issue resolution was.
we are
Brush
glad to
was
have
mowed.
that. Pardon me?
Brush was mowed.
The brush was mowed.
Yes,
Are horses allowed in the city limits?
no,
Or what? I'm sorry.
horses allowed in the city limits.
They're along-
Council
Yes.
Fox?
Horses are not allowed to be kept, but they can, you can.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
It's in our transportation plan.
Good.
Back to the future.
Any other questions or comments about the citizens inquiry? Thank you, Sammy. Alley project update. Megan.
No, it's mine.
Oh,
I put the wrong name, I'm sorry.
That's
oh,
okay.
my script has one and the sheet has another.
Megan will be staffing this project. It's been assigned to her and she's in the midst of finalizing her work plan with Brian. We'll be meeting about that next week. So this is a follow-up to the discussion we had last time. So the city is working on a development plan to determine the use of the alleys. So we have worked out and we have actually mapped the alleys and so that you can see what is the use of the alley. Some of the blue ones are actually have city infrastructure in them. And so that we do want to keep those alleys clear. The purple ones are required for access to the homes on that block. And the orangish red ones are actually alleys that at this point, the city doesn't really see that those are alleys that have a use at this point. So we'll be working on that. So part of what we will be doing is we will be calling in locates for every alley as we're scheduling a part of town within a time frame, a week. And so Public Works will call in a locate for that alleyway. On that same week, the alleyway will be photographed and those photographs will be retained. The photographs will show us what is in the alleyway, if there's anything in there that's not supposed to be in the buildings, fences, garbage piled, whatever that is, we will photograph it. We'll also be designing a survey to go to the public. And because we really want to know, how are you using this alley? Are you driving into your backyard of this alley? Are you parking your camp trailer through the alley? I mean, how essential are these alleys to the residents? And so we really wanted to ask the residents, you know, how are you using them? So we will be conducting that as well. And we had talked about sending that out, but we'll also go door to door for the residents that are living on alleys and actually try to talk to them. So we will be doing that. And then we will pull all of it into a report for the council to review. And then at that time, the mayor would probably appoint some counselors to work with the staff to try to make a recommendation on how we move forward. A couple things that have come up through discussions with our engineer is that the city needs to be really careful when we're looking at the future because lot densities change. And so, and the trend is for smaller footprints in housing. And so, and a lot of those new neighborhoods have alley access to these homes because the lot density is too small to provide a driveway in the front of the house or a garage in front of the house. So we need to think about those looking out. The other piece is that we do have to consider more than who lives on the alley. So there is a requirement that 2/3 of the property within 200 feet of the alley also have to be notified, and we need to survey them as well. Are they using the alley? So there's a little bit of work on the staff's part. Couple things that have come up is that the city used to have a revocable right-of-way permit. And it was, we still have it, the form, but it was blended into the standard right-of-way permit, which is normally used for other utilities, such as CenturyLink wants to come in and do something, but really not maybe a good permit to use for someone who wants to, say, build a garage in the right-of-way. And so what it used to be is a revocable permit, so that if they want to leave their fence there, we say, okay, but you have to understand that if we need you to move your fence, you have to move your fence. And this could be a way of bringing some of the encroachments into compliance, is an agreement that they sign that says, I understand my building's in the right of way, and I know that I have to tear it down if there's any point that the city needs to use this alley. So it could be an alternative to vacating the alleys, is to allowing for these revocable permits. So that is some of the things that the staff are working on, and this is just a really quick update report to you of where we are on this and how we're moving forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilor Bell?
Question, are the revocable permits transferable? So if I sell my property, that would transfer to the new owner?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm assuming
You
that
could make
we
them.
could make them transferable to whoever owns the property.
And that new owner would have to also sign that, be aware and.
Well, actually, it traveled with the property.
Okay, so it would become sort of a condition of sale, and it would have to be disclosed.
It's a deed restriction.
Yeah, okay.
Councilor McConnell?
So I do notice that there's one alley missing.
Yeah, we missed a couple. This
Oh, okay.
was just a starting point, and
Okay.
it was really a illustration. So there is a couple little pieces missing. So we'll get those.
What's the difference between city infrastructure and utilities? So in other words, some could be city, what are other utilities?
It could be fiber, it could be phone lines, it could be the gas lines. So there are
Not
other
sewer.
utilities. Pardon me.
Not sewer.
Sewer, so the sewer and the water are mainly in the alleys that are blue.
And there's another element to this, and if you recall, we had a resolution to create a committee to look at this. But I feel it's most important to have something to look at, to get all the information together. So that's what we're working on. Staff's putting time into making an inventory and then looking at these options. And so we're quite a ways out before we actually have a committee to sit down, look at these policies like what she was just discussing. And also, to look at other things, because the density issue that she was talking about, it's the future. And we need to be careful when we look at these things, because the state of Oregon right now has legislated that I believe there's a 5,000 population limit where they have to consider high density in their development. So if somebody comes in and says, well, I want to put 2 homes on this piece of property, I'm paraphrasing, but we would have to do that if we had the population threshold. But it's a trend, and we need to be aware of that and be careful with that as we look at the possibility of vacating these alleyways that may help with that density issue.
But again, if we have to vacate an alley, everybody who has adjacent property to that alley or 200 feet near that alley would have to agree to it.
I think that notification has to go to at least 200 feet, but everybody on the alley does have to agree to it. There was one other thing that I also, we talked about was that we need to do something to strengthen the language about, of how the alleys are maintained. So I think one of the struggles that our public works team has that could probably alleviate a lot of their work is that people dump the garbage into the alleyways and then they call and complain. Well, or their neighbors complain and then our public works team's out there cleaning it up. And I think that establishing or updating and educating on the responsibilities of the owners of Adina Alley is going to be important as we move forward.
So it's a work in progress.
It's a
Lots
work
of
in
work.
progress.
Any other questions or comments from councilors? Thank you, Ann. Financial written update. Any questions for Tim?
Just in the future, I'd like to get an update on how much we've collected on the gas tax that we approved from 3 cents to 6 cents. How that's benefiting the city.
Okay.
Not tonight necessarily, but just a future information piece.
You bet. We can have that in the next one. It'll be a quarterly report, so we can get that in there. No problem.
When do we get reports from the state on that?
They usually come in like the first 3 weeks of the month following the collection of it. So like for July, it'd be here by the end of August, basically. Month behind most of the time. Like that's like most of our revenues. Most of our revenues are that way.
And again, what was the stated purpose or use for that tax? Is it pretty wide open for streets and?
It goes into the street
gas
fund.
test- The gas test has to be for street maintenance
Mhm.
and repairs or for the retirement of debt associated with the repairs and maintenance of the roads.
And
Yeah.
also right of ways.
Yeah, I would have to read the ordinance. I'm
Mhm.
assuming yes, right of ways would be in there.
Check that out.
Other questions? Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Administrative monthly report. And we had the revised financial report included in the red folder. Any questions for Ann on, or Tim on that, I guess?
I did want to call out the police department. We're going to be changing up the way the police department reports. And I've been working with Larry to really use the dispatch reports to start providing council a little bit more information on police activity in Coburg. So this month's report has a lot more information than you might see as far as explanation, because he really wanted you to see what kind of calls they get. In the future, it would be broke down into 6 or 7 different areas of crime or reports that they are dispatched onto. It would also cover their patrol time. And so on this fact sheet, it gives 2 different ways of looking at it, both the raw data, it's on page 7, as well as a pie chart for a police activity. And these are directly from the dispatch reports. So the chief will start providing these reports to you on a quarterly basis. And so you can see what kind of calls are we getting, how many of that kind of call are we getting? And so that will be new on a quarterly basis. In addition, beginning with the quarter ended December 31st, there will be another pie graph that will report on how our police officers are spending their time. So whether they're on patrol, whether they're in Harrisburg, maybe they're investigating. And so they will be giving you a little bit more information on how their time is spent. And so the reason that is a little bit delayed is because we set up some special codes in payroll so that they're doing a little bit more diligent reporting on their time cards as to how they're spending their time on a daily basis. The reason that's important is because there are percentages of time that you want to see an officer on the beat and you want to see an officer doing administrative work. And if our officers are spending every bit of time available to them out patrolling or reporting to crimes, then we're not getting our administrative work done. And that would be an indication that perhaps our capacity is starting to shrink in being able to respond to the community needs. And so that's a good indicator for us that we need to start thinking about growing the police department or redoing how we manage our calls or whatever. I would leave that piece up to the chief, but it's a real good indicator that we are starting to use all of our police time and administrative paperwork, investigations and stuff like that could be following.
And training.
And training could be following along the wayside. So it's really important for us to start looking at that so that we do know when we have to increase our capacity of our police department, that there is some background for information that can help us make that decision. So that was, I just wanted to share that with you. The chief had to be out of town and he would have liked to share this with you. So,
Hey, the chief's always here.
yes, yes.
Well, I want to make note that, again, a lot of this information is coming from our new dispatch services with Lane County Sheriff, which we couldn't get from our previous dispatch service. And yes, we're paying more for the Lane County Sheriff, but we're getting more.
I can answer any other questions you might have about the city administrator report.
Well, I definitely like the new reporting and look forward to commenting and seeing what we can do to get good information to make good decisions. Any other questions or comments on the administration report?
Maybe just an update on how the officer that we have assigned to work in Harrisburg, how that program's going.
I probably can't report on that. That would be for the,
In the future.
in the next, yeah. Yes, absolutely. I will ask the chief to do that.
And they are tracking the time that
Yes, in Harrisburg, yes. That's part of the new payroll drop downs is a Harrisburg patrol drop down, so we can get an idea of how many hours are being spent in Harrisburg on a monthly basis.
Other questions or comments for administration report?
I actually have.
Go ahead.
The chief did provide for me the Harrisburg report that he provided to Harrisburg. And if the council is interested in reading that, it's provided to the Harrisburg City Council, and I can certainly send that out to you. I should have included this in it, and I just overlooked that, so.
Next month report's fine.
Pardon me?
Just supplying it at the next month's report
Okay.
would be fine.
Next month, okay, that's fine.
Other questions? Anything else, Ann?
That'd be it. I did send a message out to the council, letting you know that any kind of documentation that I provide you mid-month will be included in the packet so that it's put onto the record. So we will be moving forward to do that. And that would be all.
And again, we have our minutes for our committees, the draft minutes available at the back of the packet. And at this time, I'm going to ask for any council comments and maybe liaison reports, if counselors have any.
We have a date for the tour of the sewer program.
We still
Yes.
on,
October
26.
26th.
Sammy, are you going to send invitations? Can you? send
I'm pretty sure
invitations?
you have one, but I will confirm that.
Okay,
That one out.
Thank you.
thank you.
What time is that?
That's a great question. I think it was 4:30 for the tour. And then dinner and work session 6. Is that
Yes.
right?
I will make sure that you guys get another calendar, save the date reminder. I'll get it, work with Brian.
Yeah, I just have 6 o'clock on that day.
The work
Tuesday.
session, okay.
Is that for all council members? Or?
We hope.
I hope,
I,
Did they say
well,
6
I've
p.m.?
already been. Should I go again?
absolutely.
Yeah, he's had more time to clean more stuff up.
Don't want to be greedy.
So the 26th.
Yeah, right, 26th at 6.
Yeah, I believe we're gonna go out there about 4:30 and then come back here, have dinner, and then at 6 o'clock. But we will send out a complete agenda to you guys this week. And plan, and it is a work session, so there won't be any action. It will be noticed because we will be talking city business. And I'll be able to see you guys next time.
All right.
We will do a tour of the treatment plant, and then we're going to look at the septic system here at City Hall, so you guys can see how.
And then have dinner.
It'll smell really yummy, Patty.
You can be just like one of the guys, go work on a sewer and then come have lunch.
Counselor McConnell.
I just wanted to do, I don't need to make a report on my tree committee liaison, but I would just like to say I really enjoyed being on that committee, and when I can't attend, Mary's been very good about it. But I like.
Well, that's good. We hope to, the goal was to communicate council.
And she's excellent.
Anybody else? Counselor Lehman, we're just going to go across the table.
Well, I was just thinking, what came of the questions or issues of the signage and better way. We had a conversation about the ordinance specifies a certain 2 foot by 2 foot total square footage.
Mhm.
There's some that are getting that, some of them that are actually parking spaces. Some issues around that.
Are you talking about the sandwich boards?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have talked with a couple businesses who were not placing them correctly. And asked them to place correctly. I met with one business who wasn't taking it down, so they're supposed to be removing them every day when they're not in business. So it's a really hard subject right now because we're trying to support our businesses who are struggling. And so we talked with the economic development, or not, with the Main Streets group that was working on advertising and economic development for the community. And there is a kind of a work group putting together some ideas for signage for local businesses rather than sandwich boards. So there would be, and this might be some money something that the American Recovery Funds would help with, is providing directional signs for. our local
Wayfaring, I think they
businesses.
call it.
Wayfaring signs for local businesses, and perhaps that could replace the sandwich board or at least reduce the sandwich boards. I've talked to a couple businesses about this, and they've actually said, I would pay for my directional sign, or I would contribute it to it, but there was a definite, very positive feeling that this would be very helpful to the businesses. And so we do have rules about the sandwich boards. It's just that staff doesn't go out driving sandwich boards. We work on complaint basis most of the time. And so the ones that we have had complaints about, we have dealt with. If there's a specific one that needs to be dealt with, then just let us know what that is, where that is.
I haven't seen this one recently, but it's like 6 or 8 feet tall. It's like a flag that is right on the sidewalk that actually.
Counselor Bell.
I'm a liaison on the planning commission, and I have learned a lot.
There's a lot to learn.
There's a lot to learn. So mostly I am just a sponge on that committee yet, but it is very interesting. It's I think we all in this room and outside of this room have a huge vested interest in terms of how we manage growth. We acknowledge that there's going to be growth, but how do we manage it? I've been learning a lot.
And you could be there for 30 years and continue to learn.
The committee members are
It's an
awesome.
impressive commitment to go into planning and be a volunteer in that.
Yes.
I'll come back to me because I do have a report. We have this transportation group in our city, this resource that's amazing. Councillor Fox is our representative to the Lane Act, which is the Area Committee on Transportation for Central Lane County. I being mayor and the representative for the Metropolitan Policy Committee, which is basically the federal piggy bank monies that come into the metropolitan area, and it's Eugene, Springfield, and Coburg. So I represent on that. And then we have Commissioner John Marshall, who is on the Lane County Transportation Committee. I forget what the name of it is, but he's very knowledgeable of the planning and goings on of transportation in the Lane County aspect. And of course, we have Paul Thompson, who helps with federal funding and how the money moves around and accountability for highway projects and stuff. Well, we had a meeting and put our heads together to try and put a single message out from Coburg to any of these agencies, and it was a good meeting. We got some good notes, and we'll get scripting and talking points. The bypass was a big issue, future, to get heavy commercial traffic and commuter traffic out of our downtown, maybe. And then also just the message carrying forward and what we're looking at as far as some of the transportation issues, including I-5 closures that come into our town and stuff. So I think it was a really good meeting, and we'll probably have another one in a while. I think that was a very worthwhile time for us. It was a couple hours and very beneficial. Brian and Ann and Megan were also in that meeting. So we had staff and planning aspects of it too. So it was a good meeting. Okay, Nancy, did you have anything else?
No, I think that's it. I was trying to remember. I thought there was something I read. And I'm not going to bring it up in the meeting because I'm not sure where I read it.
We can always come back to you.
All
Councilor
right.
Alexander.
Question on the street next to the Blue Bistro. Weren't we talking about blocking that off for? Is that done? Yeah. No parking, sorry, the other way.
There is a no parking, but it's not enforced.
Full of joking there. Full joking. That stop sign seems set far back. Everybody pulls ahead of the stop sign to look down the
Have to
street.
because of the trees that are there on
Right.
over or Chiefs.
The other stop signs I've noticed too is at the park, east side. Most people just run that, but I can see why. That sign is set back in the grass area. There's a tree, blocks it as you're coming down the road. By the time you see it, you're over it. I just see them blow through there all the time. I'm there with my kids almost every day. Blow through it all the time. After seeing 10 cars in an hour do it, start to figure out maybe it's not the people. Maybe it's the placement of the sign and the fact that there's no line. So there's nothing designating to stop until you're at the stop. And then it's time to slam on your brakes.
I think this is something that I know Brian and many of us have had conversation over that we need to look at because the history of the city is whenever anybody complained about anything at any intersection, you went over and dug a hole and stuck a stop sign in there.
Yeah.
And it's problem solved. And so we have all these stop signs everywhere and they aren't doing anything in many cases. I think that's something that we really do need to look at in our transportation discussions and just look at the inventory. I know Damien has talked a lot about it too, and it is something that the city needs to look at. And probably, you know, whether we convene a streets committee or something that would help us to look at those things and address them with the assistance of the city engineer and Brian.
I was just thinking a simple reflective white line would work quite well. Just because you know where to stop. You don't see this, because when you see a white line going across a road, that's indicating something's there, right? Right, well, yeah, that would be nice
And
too.
then you get into the policy of, do we paint that at every stop?
Right.
Do we look at all these? That's where the policy part, we need to look at these inventories, just like our alley issue. We need to look at these, get an inventory and see what's really gonna work, and especially sitting down with the city engineer, because there are standards that we should be following and we haven't.
Okay.
So it's,
It would definitely help on Coleman too.
yeah.
Yeah. Directing traffic, absolutely. I've worked as a liaison for the police department. It's been totally eye-opening. I'll speak for myself. It's surprising how much I've taken it for granted, what they do every day, and how they view the city. They view it in a way of protecting it, which I will tell you, they all do. They do care very much about our town. So it's been eye-opening. Like you, I've been kind of a sponge, but I've had a lot of input. I've put in a lot of input on maybe looking at things in two ways. And I personally do that. I can't look at something, I don't dedicate my thoughts to one way. And everything I do all day, I dedicate it to both sides, all sides. And so I've been very big on bringing that forward to Larry, basically, to make sure we look from all sides. We don't just look from one. But I've also heard, you know, basically how maybe they feel underappreciated. That's why I really was pushing, maybe we could all get together as a group and show some support as far as their training they're going to be doing. That's one huge way. Because one thing I watched when I was doing that training with them, they were watching me for my reactions to see how it was affecting me, knowing that I didn't have experience with that. And they were looking for that support, even just in a facial expression. Well, that's why I brought that up, but it's been very exciting and eye-opening of how much goes on in this town. It's quite amazing, actually. And there's a few places where it comes from, but this little town has a lot going on, a lot passing through it, a ton passing through it. So it's been great. I don't really have much to report, but just been working closely with them.
Thank you, Mark. Councilor Fox.
So the ad hoc committee finished up its work for the time being. We're taking a hiatus while the work that we did goes off to people who are polishers of documents. I, like Nancy, almost had my brain explode working on this committee because there was a lot of thought and passionate discussions that we had about setbacks and building lanes and how they don't end up like certain examples in other towns. And that, you know, how we preserve or challenge future developers to be more like some of the developments that we've had recently. So it was really good, and I think we got some good elements in there, and we'll see when it's polished, how to design it, you know, how to keep things from looking like blocks, and how to really challenge a person not to put a block in with a triangle on top, and therefore I've redesigned my block, which I got a photo of up in Sisters where Chain Store did. So. Formula codes, and we came up with 2 parcels. We modified one from another town, Port something up in Washington. So yeah, it was very good, and really appreciated all the members. And the time that they put into it. You know, Marissa has experience as an architect, and making on the name of former planner. Kathy, thank you so much, who put so much thought and editing into the documents. Without them on there, what a thing.
I just feel that was the dream team. When we sat down to look at this committee, we said, who do we want to be on that? And every person we wanted got on that committee. And so that was pretty exciting. So I appreciate your work because I knew it was going to be hard work.
That was good, because everyone had different perspectives and right down to, you know, the traffic, you know, that was a sub thing. We talked about, you know, it never came up this way, but I think about the Coburg Beltway. I mean, you know, because Kathy had this idea about with the Coburg Loop that could be attached to the south end of town. As a matter of fact, they went over to the maps to see, you know, oh, that's farmland, you know, that thing. But so you could have people going around it, and would minimize the traffic through town. Let's see, the other thing, a couple other things was, I went on a tour of Green Island the other day. They open it up once a month. And this lovely volunteer coordinator, Elizabeth, another person that I knew there, shared that I was on city council, and they said they would give us a personal tour if we ever wanted to go out there on the Green Island. It's gorgeous out there. If you've never been out there, the views of the Willamette.
It's very changed from what it used to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that, but it was my first time out there. It used to be.
It was all farmed. They used to go out there all the time and put grass fires out on the fire department when they were cutting straw or wheat or corn or whatever. And no more. They've tried to put it back to its natural element, and it's amazing what they've done. I would highly recommend it, actually, that we would go on a tour like that.
That could be fun, maybe in the spring. And I didn't get to ask this during the this section of the meeting, but this is a phenomenal appraisal, and I'm just wondering how much it costs, because unbelievable.
$4,500.
4,500? I was thinking you were gonna say
We had to wait a
45,000.
very, very, very long time for it. We had to get in line.
Wow, oh, it is a comprehensive, yeah, it is first class. And no, no more on that, but the last thing I have, I love what we've done with the room, and I can tell it's been very thought out and almost to the inch. It's just unfortunate that the citizens testifying aren't on the screen. I mean, they're just.
No,
one
they
inch.
are.
What?
They are,
I was looking at Joe Morone.
swap cameras, so I changed it, so that means I was slacking on my job.
Oh, okay.
I tried.
Oh, okay.
See?
Okay, if I notice that again, I'll go camera adjustment.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you
I'll give
said,
you a remote.
it's been well thought out.
Oh,
There has
yeah,
been
yeah.
A lot of thought.
I'm really
Doing this.
impressed.
Looks really good.
And it's still working. We're still working on it. The TV and the cart and where Sammy's buried behind the wall there is an issue we're trying to deal with.
Nice post cover. There,
You like that?
yes, I do.
I
Very
think
nice.
that one needs.
I've had a request to make the
Yes.
other one look that way too, but
Yes.
Very, very nice.
they hit it back there. That one's still back there on the wall.
Oh.
I couldn't read them anyway.
I remember.
Counselor Bell.
So the thing that I was going to ask about, and Ann, I apologize, this is in your administrative report. It's the TGM grant for transportation plan update, and that we did not get that. So if we could have some report maybe next council meeting about what thoughts are in terms of moving forward and getting council input on that. That's appropriate, but
I mean, I can share, the mayor can share right
It's,
now.
there's
about-
not a whole lot that we can do without the grant. The transportation group that I talked to you about that met, we talked a lot about that and whether we should put something into this, because what we were looking at was our transportation planning was every item that popped up, the Wykert subdivision, the IAMP over on the other side, the access for any new development here, they just kept popping up and we're like, okay, well, let's just amend our transportation plan. So we had this big box of Band-Aids that we were trying to dispense and put out and spend $20,000 to coordinate these Band-Aids. And that's when I went into Ann and I said, we need to stop this. We just need to stop. And we did. So we asked Jake to not spend any more time or money on this and reassess. And so we're still in that reassessment mode, but that was one of the big discussions that we had with the transportation group was whether we should be moving forward with building an entire new transportation plan, which involves the LCD, Lane County, us, possibly ODOT, and then public input process, which we're not required to have because we're not a city of 5,000 or more. We had a plan and I think it helped us a lot and does help us as far as grants and things that may come up when people see that we are planning and we're serious about our transportation. But to keep spending $20,000 to do an update, and then as soon as we get this update done, we find another one because all we did was kind of focus on one issue to get that updated so we can move forward with whatever project was in there. So I think right now we're still in the holding pattern and we're still looking at whether we want to continue a Band-Aid process or just wait, make sure we've got all of our list of things that we need to deal with, and then do a full update. But it's also part of the discussion that has changed into jurisdictional issues over the county roads, whether we want to take those over or not. And that just changes a lot of things that this city is going to be doing. So I think there's just so many question marks floating around right now that between the transportation group and staff, we just need to look at it and get more information. And I think what we kind of come up with was the holding pattern is good. Let's hold, let's get more information, and then we'll make a decision because it's a budget decision. It's tens of thousands of dollars.
right.
And it's not truly required, but we can continue to move forward with requesting grants, with moving forward with our street projects and things like that without a TSP.
So do we address those issues just then in code or in order? How,
Well, like,
I guess
let's
that's
look
my
at the
question.
IAMP. So here's an example of the IAMP on the east side and Van Dyne going over there to access property. Who gets to put their code standard on that road? Well, Coburg, of course, wants to, but it's Lane County's road. And ODOT is putting in, they have a management plan there that has some requirements and restrictions. So going back and forth between those, so we were looking at, we need to change our plans so that it says we will annex that property so that we can have control over it. And then the county comes and says, no, we're not gonna support that. And ODOT says, well, you could do this or that, and then they come back later and say, well, we misspoke on that. So multiple agencies and multiple things going on. It's just very frustrating. It's a complex issue. There's so many things overlapping.
But what about within our, within this community, within like, talking about traffic on Coleman or collector streets, or do we deal with those in a different way if we do not have a TSP? I guess that's.
So I think
That's-
what you're asking about is design standards for
Okay,
streets.
yes,
And
all
so,
Another issue.
we talked about that. And so design standards do exist in our development code, the same way that they exist in our transportation plan. They're supposed to mimic one another. So we're in the middle of a design or a development code update right now. And so what I suggested last night was to have a conversation with our engineer, which we have scheduled for next week. Talk about if a design standard for a collector street is the same for an existing narrow street as it would be for a new street, and perhaps we change the design code to say, if this is an existing street and it's under this many square feet across or whatever, that this is the design standard for that street. And if you're building a brand new street, such as in the Whitekirk subdivision, and it's a collector, then you're required to build up to these standards, which would be the federal standards. So taking into account that we have some historical streets that just aren't gonna work for this federal standard. So we will be talking with him about that. My suggestion to the mayor was that we let the engineer help us come up with some ideas for some design standards for development code, and use the same ad hoc committee when they come back to review these, so that we're not creating a new committee to look
We don't
at
have
it.
to
We already
re-educate.
have one formed that could possibly receive this information from the engineer. And that would go forward with the rest of the changes recommended. for
So here's a
development.
very specific example that we talked about in the transportation group. Let's say you have a 40-foot wide right of way. We have in our development code a design standard, and we get a grant, and the federal government says you have to abide by your design standard. Well, our design standard doesn't fit in that 40-foot right of way. And we don't have any other option. We took a template, what many cities do, and Coburg said, oh, here's a wonderful template, and put it in there. And now we're dealing with the issue of that, another amendment. That's the kind of stuff that just keeps coming up for us that we're dealing with. But she's right. Let the engineer come in, give us an idea, get that code updated so that we follow the grant requirement of using our code standard, our standard in the code.
So that
was
answers
an
my
exhale
question.
moment for me when he came up and said all that, because when we were presented with those sidewalks coming down Coleman, I was freaking out, but the money looked good. And then here, all you have to do is, tweak, make yourself the individual city that you want to be.
Right.
And I was able to speak with Dan Callister by email, and also the city of Eugene today. And the city can actually kick out the Collector Street project 1 year to allow ourselves time to redevelop our code. And then the engineering would happen in 23 with the construction happening in 24. So we could push our project out, still maintain the funding that's been granted to us, and actually be able to take care of this. So.
Are we still
You
hoping?
answered my questions. I mean, even without an updated or a transportation TSP, we still have mechanisms.
Oh, we absolutely have
Yes,
the code,
and
the
that's-
development code is
Yeah,
in there.
thank you.
The TSP is the overall, it's the
Right.
big plan, and it and it should reference our code and say, follow the design standard in the code. Not the other way around, as we were discussing, that the TSP would have it, and the code says, follow the design standard in the TSP. It goes downhill. And so those are the issues we're looking at. And again, the transportation group that we had together was a good discussion about how to move forward with this. And it is a big money issue, any money on planning. So I think Ann's doing a great job. She chases things down and gets contacts and makes things happen, and that's a big part of this. Did we get any confirmation about Eugene coming on and starting our design?
So I talked with Katie today. They said they would pencil it in. I mean, they could move it to 23. They would pencil it in. We have to enter into an MOU with them, but then we're gonna kick it out to 23. There's not such that push that we have to get that MOU done right now. But yeah, so we can't manage these projects by ourselves. There has to be a certified agency that manages them, and we're not. So Lane County, Springfield, or the city of Eugene are the certified agencies in Lane County. So we have to be able to ask them to take our project, and they have to manage it in their own capacity as far as the available time that their staff has to manage our project. So I don't think they were too upset about hearing that we would push a project to 23 for
I
engineering.
just don't want them to put it off another year and have us go
Right.
back to the same
No,
thing.
actually, what I got from her is that would be fine, that they could pencil that for 23. We have to make our decision by the 28th of October and let the MPO know that we plan to change the timing of our project.
All that planning and transportation stuff, so much fun, right? Did you have something?
Haven't seen any tickets.
The chief's not here, but we can certainly get a comment from him.
No, it's a city, no parking, I believe,
Yes, that's correct.
yes.
It really is an issue, and especially if it's possible, it's congested.
And is it city right of way property?
Where the sign is, yeah.
We could, but.
Yeah, we could. We definitely could.
Well, that could really make it a hazard, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that we probably ought to look at the enforcement aspect first before we put.
I was thinking nicely landscape.
Well, but you're narrowing. And Brian, were we ever, or Ann, I don't know who to ask. We talked about maybe just diagonal parking on the chief side. Were we ever able to have that conversation? I mean, it's when you have a full-sized rig coming out really into the traffic lane, and then you have somebody parked on the other side. I mean, you've narrowed it to one lane.
I was talking on the chief side.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that where the no parking is?
No, it's on the bistro side is the no parking sign.
The issue really is more frequently on the chief side.
The big rigs,
Trucks.
yeah.
Diagonal that it should put 2 feet in.
And that's,
There's not a no parking sign.
no, there is not, and there
That
was,
is our city right away, right?
I don't know. I mean, Brian would maybe know that. Did you hear
I think
that?
there's
Con-
right of way there, but I believe that there's more off-street parking. To be honest with you, I shouldn't even answer that question. without looking at
Well, we
it.
could allow
It's a good
parking
answer.
Either diagonal, not pushing it to the street or parallel. Or parallel. That's where I see the issue with.
Well, that was my understanding. I actually thought that's where the no parking signs were gonna go, was on the chief's side.
It's on the bistro side, because that is, I think, Chiefs,
There's
I
no-
think that is a parking lot. That's part of their parking area, I think.
But I would say that probably, well, it's probably a 15-foot setback, so 15 foot is chiefs and the rest of it is the cities. Maybe less.
Oh, no.
If we,
Too many cars 15 feet long.
I've not been able to link up with that. schedule.
We'll try to link up with Matt and talk.
If you go over the bistro, you always see it, always an issue. Just is.
Any other comments or questions from counselors? It was a good meeting. I'm going to close this meeting at 8:52.